In June 1812, the young United States declared war on the greatest power in the world, Great Britain. For 2.5 years, Americans fought against the British, Canadian colonists, and native nations in a small but bitter war. It's the war that Americans have largely forgotten, but the British don't remember it either. But if it's been forgotten in Britain and the United States, there is a place where people remember the War of 1812, Canada. The native nations that fought alongside the British would remember it too, but not as a victory. What lasted on every side was a mythical version of history.
This was a time when legend and myth often substituted for verifiable history.
Even real stories turned into legends. In Canada, both a frontier housewife and an aristocratic British general became national heroes. In the U.S., a Shawnee chief is still much admired, though he fought on the other side. And a war composed largely of American defeats is now remembered for a victory at New Orleans, Old Ironsides. The War of 1812 was a paradox of scale. Its armies were small and casualties very few. Yet the battleground stretched across much of North America and beyond. But in Europe, another war raged, the decades-long struggle between Britain and Napoleon's France. It was this titanic conflict that touched off the War of 1812. In 1807, Britain began to issue a series of decrees to undermine American trade. All neutral ships trading with France had to stop in Britain first and pay a duty, or else the British would simply regard them as enemy. The enormously powerful Royal Navy seized hundreds of American ships. In fact, the British took more than ships and money. They seized men as well. For James Madison and his nation, 1812 was a year of debacle and defeat, the utter collapse of the ambitious three-part invasion of Canada. 1813 had begun with the massacre of American troops at River Raisin. Even worse, the British Navy had begun a strangling blockade along the eastern seaboard. By the end of March, the blockade extended from the Delaware Bay to Florida. The commander in charge of the small British squadron on Lake Erie was Robert Harriet Barclay, a 27-year-old veteran who had already lost an arm in battle. His opposite number was Commander Oliver Hazard Perry of the U.S. Navy. Both men were overseeing the feverish construction of ships on Lake Erie. The coming naval battle would decide the fate of the entire Great Lakes region. On the morning of September 10, 1813, the U.S. fleet sailed toward the British. Perry, on his flagship the Lawrence, flying a flag that paid homage to Lawrence's last words. Not a word was spoken, an American seaman remembered. It seemed like the awful silence that precedes an earthquake. This was the time to try the stoutest heart. The first cannonball tore through the Lawrence.
It was customary, if your vessel was incapable of maneuvering, you would strike your colors. Perry wasn't about to do that. Miraculously, he had survived the cannonading. He had the ship's longboat brought alongside, and he jumped down into the longboat with shot whizzing around his ears. The famous painting shows him standing in the boat. He probably didn't stand in the boat.
But he certainly was under fire. The British realized what he was doing, and they tried to target him. There were cannonballs and round shot and grape shot and canister raining down, but he made it safely to the second ship, the Niagara.
He hoisted his colors in the Niagara and pressed on with the attack.
After 3 hours, the British gave up their ships. All of them. An entire squadron of the world's most powerful navy had been captured.
At the end of the battle, Perry sits down and he writes a very simple note. We have met the enemy, and they are ours. 2 ships, 2 brigs, 1 schooner, and 1 sloop.
The U.S. controlled Lake Erie, and the British supply line was severed.
You tars of Columbia, give ears to my story. Who fought with brave Perry, whose cannon did roar? Your valor has gained you an immortal glory, and fame that will last until time is no more. On the 10th of September, let us all remember, as long as the globe on its axis reels round, our tars and Marines on Lake Erie were seen to make the red flag of proud Britain come down. Columbian tars are the true sons of Mars, who rake fore and aft when they fight on the deed. On the bed of Lake Erie, commanded by Perry, they caused many Britons to take the last lead. Of our fleet was brought up complete, commanded by Perry, the Lawrence bore down. Our guns they did roar, such terrific power, that savages trembled at that dreadful sound. The Lawrence sustained the most dreadful of fires. She fought 3-2-1 for 2 glasses or more, whilst Perry undaunted did firmly stand by her, and on the proud foe heavy broadsides did pour. Her mast being shattered, her rigging all tattered, her sails all in ribbons, her wheels shot away. With few left on deck to manage the wreck, our heroes on board her no longer would slay. One gallant act of our noble commander, whilst writing my song I shall notice with pride, when launching the smack that carried his standard, the ball whistled through her quite close by his side. Said Perry, those villains intend sure to drown us, but push on, my brave boys, you need never fear. And then with his coat he plugged up the boat, and through sulphur and fire away he did steer. The famed Niagara, now proud of her Perry, displayed all her banners and gallant array. Full 25 guns on board she did carry, which soon put an end to this sad bloody fray. The Britons grew shorter and shorter. The signal was given to break through their line, while starboard to larboard and from every quarter the guns of Columbia gloriously shine. In the heat of the battle, whose cannon did rattle, on the Lawrence a wreck, with their men near all slain, brave Elliot did steer and safe brought up the rear, and by this grand maneuver the victory was gained. Toss it about with a full glass in hand.